Good evening. Welcome to the October 12th, 2021 meeting of the Pequannock Township Council. Ms. Marsh?
In accordance with the requirements of New Jersey's Public Open Meetings Act, New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice, which was filed in the office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, published as a legal notice in the Suburban Trends newspaper, and distributed to all persons requesting notice in accordance with Township policy.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer and a moment of thanks for individuals serving our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Providence, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all the people of Pequannock Township. Amen.
Amen. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Dreesy?
Here.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Here.
Mr. Hurd?
Here.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mayor Russell?
Here. There are no presentations scheduled for this evening, so at this time, if there are any reports or comments from any of the volunteers serving our community, please come up to the microphone.
Hello, I am Emmy Chase. I am a student from Pequannock, and I am the senior student representative for Pequannock Township High School for Propel and the Social Equity Council.
Emmy, just do me a favor. Just Frank's saying that he can't really hear you.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Bring it a little closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Good. Okay. So I'm going to just report what Propel has done over the past few months, because we haven't been here to report in a couple months. So on August 23rd, during the Board of Education meeting, Propel provided comments supporting the social emotional learning program implemented in Pequannock Township schools. We believe the program's focus on kindness and working together will help students bind more effectively as a community and has great promise for reducing bullying. On September 13th, during the Board of Education meeting, Propel delivered a summary of real-life stories of bias that have occurred in Pequannock Township to support Superintendent Portis and his entire staff as they make curriculum enhancements to more completely teach our children the truth. On September 19th, Propel sponsored a booth at Pequannock Street Fair, showing the many accomplishments made in the township during June Pride Month, including the Town Council's proclamation, a first for Pequannock Township. During the September 27th Board of Education meeting, Propel provided support for the district goals presentation by Superintendent Portis and offered a plea to the board to be wary of what is being promoted as patriotic curriculum. And the Social Equity Council has taken inspiration from Keene University as well as many other towns in the country for a Rainbow Pride crosswalk, and hopefully we can maybe implement that into our own township. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't know where she gets her good speaking from. Are there any other reports from volunteers? The next item on the agenda is public comments. This public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes. An additional period for public comment is reserved for later on in the meeting. Individuals are requested to limit their questions and comments to 3 minutes. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized to come to the microphone and provide your name and address for the record.
Now's the time to talk, guys. There we go. Come on up. We don't bite.
I'm new to town, so
Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah. And you know why I moved here. I mean, it's obvious.
So I just
I'm
need
sorry.
you to state your name and address.
Let me get to that. Yeah, Mike Rogers, 16 Voorhees Place. Been in town 13 months. Moved from Garfield, so moving on up in the world. And we moved here for all the right reasons. And this has been the best year in my family's life. When we got to town, my son started on the Boys and Girls Club football team, And he was the new kid, so he was all nervous and all that. And one of the head coaches there, he welcomed him with open arms and just made him feel so included. And that coach asked me to support finding out more about the proposal for the field fees, and I felt like I owed it to him because of the great things he did for my kid. That program itself is not selective; that's open to everyone. But they do have an A and B team and all of that. And I was a coach for 12 years. I understand selectivity. I understand the wariness when it comes to perhaps private clubs and teams and things like that. But I did share an email with the council earlier in the day. Specific members, and I'd like to thank the Deputy Mayor for reaching out. If you get a chance to read that email, I wasn't BSing. I actually have the civics notebook from the 1930s, which ironically is from someone from Garfield. And the first few pages in here is about civics. And I just want to ensure that whatever decision you make today is one not necessarily based on financial expedience, but one based on civic mindedness. I crunched the numbers for the Patriots in particular. That's the team that affects my son and my family directly. I believe that the increased fee would be about $3,000. No? No. Okay, we'll get to that later. Yeah. Okay, and that's why I'm here. So I was trying to do the math, and again, that's why I didn't want to be like in attack mode or anything like that. But I just wanted to ask you to approach things in a civic-minded way. You have a great thing going here. I'm from a city that was torn apart by petty politics, torn apart by mismanagement, lack of foresight, and I'm hopeful that every decision you make, and I'm sure of that, has the best interest of the community in mind. Because again, you do serve the taxpayer, but you do serve the posterity of the town, and I think that's really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? There being no additional public comments, we will continue on with the agenda. The next item on our agenda is the manager's report. Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for everybody coming out to hear about the township's new personnel manual. I really appreciate the fact that there's such interest in it, and I got about 2 smiles and no laughs, so I know the kind of crowd I'm dealing with tonight. The first item in my report, as discussed at the last council meeting, based upon the EPL, POL policies for the Morris County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund, for which we purchase our insurance, we're required to update the personnel manual every couple of years. We went through a comprehensive revision this year. The changes were reviewed last year. As discussed, those changes are now scheduled for the council to formally approve tonight. And then the second matter, which is the athletic field usage and fees. Just to kind of put some context and an explanation around this, obviously, I know a lot of people have had conversations. If I talk to anybody today on the phone that's in the audience, thanks for taking the time to talk on the phone today. The township currently has an ordinance that articulates fees for field usage for basically 3 different groups. And as a result of that ordinance, as well as some administrative challenges, there was a decision to try to improve things. And staff and I worked on something for about a year and talked to some people. Some people thought we should talk to more people. For those people, I think I apologized directly. But we did the best we could to come up with a pretty good product. And the goal was really to review organizations that use fields and diamonds for 3 criteria. And a priority was given to residency, a priority was given to those who are not selective, and a priority was given to those who are a nonprofit, as identified by a designation from the IRS. And in kicking around those criteria, I was really trying to come up with a relatively short list of different categories based upon things that were brought to my attention. It became an A through I. So we did the best we could with respect to that. Some of the issues that we're experiencing or have experienced, and people may have had this, may not, may be aware of this, may not. You have groups that gobble up field space, and one group says somebody does it, and one group says somebody else does it. But you'll have instances instances where there'll be a complaint about not being able to get field space and driving past, because we all know there's very limited routes when you're going to and fro and around town, driving past certain fields, being told you can't have access to that field because it's booked. You drive past it 3 times and there's never a soul on the field. So I feel that some of those conversations myself, they can be pretty frustrating. You also have some disparity in terms of who's charged what or not charged what, or who is special or different. So the goal was really to try to come up with something. Mr. Cantizano, the health officer, said before during the Board of Health meeting that most of you missed, it wasn't perfect. The goal wasn't to come up with something perfect. The goal was to come up with something that made a lot of sense and tried to move the ball forward. So we came up with the ordinance that we did. And the methodology was taking the groups, trying to fit them into those criteria. I understand, based upon the analysis and the projections, some of those criteria are wrong. I think in most cases they're wrong in the favor of the organization rather than the opposite, which is more helpful than otherwise. And then what we did was we took the 2019 field usage, or 2019 data that was available to the Parks and Recreation Department, and it was 3rd grade math. What's the multiplication? What do we come up with? Just to try to give some guidance. I'm proud to report that there was no attempt to be sexist with respect to that. As was mentioned in some of the emails, there were some apparently girls' organizations that were charged more than boys' organizations. That was because there was a different interpretation of those 3 criteria. It wasn't because they were girls' organizations. So I just want to make that point very clear. There was also some discussion, and I've had a number of conversations about Little League, and why is Little League different? Well, because they are. Little League, over the past history of Little League, has put tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, into the infrastructure. And there was never really a way to manage or review that. So the concept with Little League, and in the ordinance it's drafted this way, is to say that organizations that don't pay for the use of fields need to come to a mutually executed agreement with the municipality. So that doesn't mean that only Little League can do that. And in the conversations I have with some folks, that means that other groups that fit that dimension, or those criteria, they also now have the opportunity to use fields for free. I know there's some other groups that have contributed financially to whether it be equipment or infrastructure, and now there's a path to do that as well. So the goal was to try to be as fair as possible. Do people want to pay for things they didn't pay for before? No. Do people want to pay more for things? Not really. The example I've used a lot today was we all saw a lot of press about the gas tax going down. In New Jersey, tax going down is a really big thing. My experience was gas went up 30 cents that day. Wasn't sure how that all played out, but it was more. Was I thrilled about paying more? No, I was really hoping that I'd actually pay a little bit less at the pump, but that's not what happened. So moving forward, should the council act favorably upon this, there will be an application process, and again, there has to be an introduction, there has to be a notice, there has to be a public hearing, and then there has to be adoption. There would be an application process, and the groups would have the ability to come in, and they would certify. Am I 100% resident? Am I 50+% resident? Am I less? Am I a not-for-profit or not? And if I'm a not-for-profit, that's great, but there needs to be a IRS determination document that goes with that, and then hopefully 990s thereafter. And the last is with respect to selectivity. And that, I think, is one of the areas where there were some errors, and the greatest errors, or the greatest number of errors, in the classification of some of the different organizations, because some of the organizations were reported to be selective, and today in the conversations I had, I was told they are not. Lastly, if an organization doesn't have an IRS determination as a not-for-profit, there's always the opportunity to get it. So Tier A is the least costly group, which is those who are 100% residents, not selective, and not-for-profit. Practices are free because they don't have a significant cost associated with it. Games, there's a $20 per hour fee. Why? Because there's a cost. The cost to line and prep the fields probably exceeds that. From my perspective, this was never an initiative that was a financially driven initiative. It was more to address some of the issues and try to come up with a baseline for classifications of organizations, which could also be moved forward to determine when fields are reserved, who has access earlier or later. But But it was an initial move to try to address some of the challenges that presented themselves. So if an organization comes in and certifies the criteria, then they would be assigned, the ability to go with reserve fields, and the corresponding fees would apply. But again, there's a somewhat dynamic nature to that, and people could improve their cost or decrease their cost by becoming a higher ranked tier. So that was the impetus behind this. There was no malice. There was no attempt to pick one group over another group. Again, I'll say it because I read it in about a half dozen emails. It wasn't done for any sexist reasons. That was certainly not ever a motivation. And I appreciate the opportunity to explain it. I appreciate the interest. I love the fact that people called and wanted to get involved. That was positive. That's never a negative thing. So with that said, if there's any questions on the two items in my report or anything else from the council, I thank you for the opportunity.
Just clarification. So I believe all of us took a bunch of phone calls today. We've been on the phone with everybody with every organization. And I believe we have a meeting on the minds, which is great. And again, just to clarify, so if you're on that Tier A and you've got your certification for your nonprofit and you're taking all the kids in town and all your kids are from in town and no kids are getting kicked off because they're not, it's not a club team per se, right? They can also, in lieu of payment, let's say somebody needs a goal, I'll pick on lacrosse, they need a goal and they're not going to be taking it from Greenview and packing it up every day, and they're going to leave it there, and that can be in lieu of the payment. So that's a way of getting down to totally zero, correct?
But any group who fits that Tier A category who would like to enter into an agreement like Little League is going to be entering into can have that opportunity. Now, what are the details of that agreement? That has to be negotiated, right? So the governing body approves contracts and agreements. That would have to be something where we would sit down and talk about what's going to happen and how. And the goal really is to have the best possible facilities and the best possible programs. That is a collaborative goal. So if someone wanted to do that now through this ordinance, that opportunity exists and it provides a framework, whereas in the past that didn't exist. So yes, that is an opportunity that exists for those groups.
Okay.
So the second tier is 50, so if somebody said, we have 90%, but we want to have two teams, so we might have to pull up a couple kids from another town to be totally inclusive, they would be counted closer to the 100?
They would be in the 50 plus to 100.
Okay.
So that's why they're in the category B.
Can we make that 100 like a 95?
The council can do whatever the council wants.
And the only reason I say is because, in some of my talks today, I was happy to hear that the Patriots used to be very selective, and they no longer are. So I had a long talk with Glenn, and he said, we're not selective, we let everybody in, and I said, that's great. And then John had talked to somebody who said, well, sometimes we need one or two kids to fill maybe a second roster or team or something. But, just to make it clear, so the Patriots, if they're non-selective and the Crunch, non-selective, and they're not, they're non-for-profit, and they're all kids, they get free practices,
right.
Correct. They get free practices, and a 2-hour game is $40 a game. So the math comes out to roughly $24 extra a child a season to pay for the use. It's a user fee for the fields.
But that can be offset by in-kind. So whatever they negotiate with town, if they want to donate, let's say a batting cage, or they want to, like I said, lacrosse, if they want to do them, that can offset.
We're going to do, instead of this week's fee, we're going to take money.
No, it would be.
No, it can't be like
it's envisioned to be. It's envisioned to be a multi-year thing. And again, rewriting is always easier than writing the first time, right? So tweaking things is tweaking things.
Right.
The challenge with creating something that worked and trying not to have 25 different tiers is, all right, so what's the number? And what I heard from a lot of people was there's a lot of 100% organizations.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to be the least restrictive. Then I heard that there were a lot of organizations that were like 70-ish, 80-ish.
Oh.
Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's just the information that was provided to me. So that's why I created, because
So
if we create,
100,
if we've got 100, and then we've got a 90, and then we've got a 50, now we've got A through, N.
Gotcha. Right. Okay, makes sense.
And it just gets pretty fluid. But obviously, like I said, the council can do whatever the council.
I had talked to somebody.
Can it be 90% and then less than 90%, just to keep it simple?
It can be whatever the council wants. The reason I did the 100% was because it is acknowledged that people pay property taxes. Like, that's a
Right.
component of this. That's, Woodland Lake is structured the way it is because the property tax is maintained, right? That should be a component of this.
Same thing with PV
That
Park.
said, in municipal government, it is common for field usage fees to exist for resident and non-resident. If you look around at some of our neighboring, towns, the fees, the intention was not to come in to gouge and try to get a lot of revenue for no reason. It was try to create a construct that worked, and it's less than those towns
Right.
with which.
I think these numbers work. I think a lot of people got thrown off by that big number, and I think because they were in the wrong classification.
Yeah.
Because maybe they never gave us their 501(c)(3)s, or they never...
Or somebody told me something that wasn't accurate, I
Right.
put them in the wrong bucket.
Right,
Could be that simple.
so...
I got a few things that I just wanted to touch base on. So, we're not charging Little League because we're going to go into a contract with Little League for in-kind support or in-kind whatever they're going to do. The problem that I have with that is the same families that are doing the Little League and helping the Little League achieve that goal of financial money or whatever they're going to do, in-kind support, they're also the Patriots, the Crunch, the same teams that we're charging. So that's my first thing. Second thing, are we sure that DPW is going to be able to rake and line the fields for these folks? I mean, if they're going to be paying, from what I've heard in the past, that, during the fall, DPW is extremely busy with leaves. Are we going to be able to commit that they're going to be able to do that?
I'm not aware of a significant issue that's existed in the past. I've heard of one-offs, I've heard of a thing here and there, but I'm not aware of there being a major problem, so I wouldn't anticipate one. And with respect to the organizations and athletes, we'll call them what they are, athletes being involved in multiple groups, every group has an opportunity to do a similar thing. I worked in a municipality where there's a challenge because there was significant use of lights, and the electrical bill was calculated to be astronomical. So the decision was made to attach a surcharge to every participant who participated in every program, not even just the ones that used the lights, to derive revenue to offset the cost of the taxpayers for those lights. And the same situation persisted. But, it's kind of like a statistical analysis with and without replacement. You still have that number being counted, that user using it for that program.
I think I appreciate that. I think we also need to come up with a priority of in-town teams that are able to reserve fields prior to anyone else. There's no sense of us, on October 1st or September 1st saying, okay, here's the fields that we have, and having a out-of-town league or team being able to gobble up even 25% of the fields before our in-town teams have the opportunity to do that. So I'd like to see some sort of 2-week period that we open it up to our in-town teams prior to opening it up to anyone else. The gentleman that got up and spoke about the Boys and Girls Club, yes, they do have an A and a B team. Are we going to be okay if, the Crunch or the Patriots says, okay, this is our A team. We're not selective. We're going to take everyone, but, this is our A team and we're going to have a B team.
I don't see the number. I don't see the number of participants dramatically changing. I think you have a finite number. I mean, you look at the enrollment levels in the schools. You look at the enrollment levels in a lot of the programs, and it's shifting. It's in some ways down, unfortunately, from what it was, 25 years ago when I was playing ball. But I don't see the number of athletes changing that dramatically. And if there should be an issue, again, this is not intended to be perfect. It's intended to move the ball in the right direction. With respect to the availability, based on how people grab fields, 2 hours might be enough. But in my opinion, this will make creating a construct like that a lot easier than it is right now, because we have groups in various different category. So if you took, certain levels and said A through C, get it before other people did, or
tier ones. So a tier one would get first dibs.
Tier A through C, you get them a week in advance.
Right.
Yeah, you can set up schedules and things like that, and that's also common within municipal government by experience. Your resident organization get to structure their practice schedules and everything else, so you don't have 8-year-olds on the field at 9:30 on a Friday.
But it does take time. So, like for all the coaches, you get all your player information, and then the coaches have to then contact the team and then figure out, okay, does Wednesday night work? So, I mean, if we can get at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was just trying to inject humor about everybody gobbles them up.
Yeah. Well, that's
it's not actually 2 hours.
That's the whole thing. Everybody has to only take what they need. There has been multiple times where people have called and said, I tried to get this field, it was taken, I drove by, nobody's on it.
Just two more points on.
And we have reservations where people are then subletting their reservations to other groups, and a lot of that needs to stop. More importantly for insurance and exposure issues, because from a liability perspective, you got an issue if you bring somebody that's not supposed to be there onto a field, and there ends up litigation, which happens in Pequannock Township.
Just 2 more points from me. I'd like to see the out-of-town rate increased. I think $55 for practice an hour and $65 for a game is still a bargain. I think it should be like $75 for practice, $100 for a game. And I also think that we should put age restrictions on the field. I mean, there's no point of having a 16 to 18U girls softball team taking the fields at Hillview Park just because they're lights when they would never play on that field for a game.
Yeah, I'd want to solicit some input from staff and other folks on that, because that's not an issue I've ever heard about or am familiar with. And with respect to the fees, the current fee for out of town is $50. So the proposed ordinance increases it. If the council, as a body, would like to see that number changed, again,
I don't think we need to gouge on them either. If we go through and see that there's still a problem, we can then raise it next year. I feel like this is a great starting point to see how it works. If we have less people arguing because there's more field availability and everybody's happy, and even if you're not happy, then you come talk, we adjust it. But it needs to be a starting point, because what was going on with the fields the last couple of years was not working.
Yeah, we got to fix that.
It simply wasn't working. So we're not price gouging. It's a user fee. It doesn't even cover our costs, and a lot of the things too with the $40 fee. The $40 fee is so people don't reserve 12 fields, even though they only need it 8 times. So that was also a component of a little skin in the game, because if it's free, people were literally gobbling up, as everybody knows, and everybody says it's this group and that group and that group, and I don't know who it is. I don't really care. But this way, people won't do that. They'll take for the games we need. We have a 16-game season. I'm going to have 8 home games. Maybe I need 9. Maybe I'll schedule more later on. But this way, nobody's going to grab all the fields.
And Mayor, I also think that if everybody is in the right classifications, so the kids at Pequannock, they're, let's say, classified as A.
Right.
They get first dibs, so now they're on the fields, and then everybody else has to go to that second or third tier. And I think that's going to generate revenue anyway, because we're not going to have people gaming the system that can go into Community Pass and just click a drop down and say, oh, well, this one's costing me this and this one's free, so I'm just going to register as this. So I think that's going to also help.
I did have a request for the girls softball to have the batter's box lined. Okay. They said they had requested, and I said I would point that out. So
and one thing I also failed to mention, because one of the questions is, what are we doing with the money? There's no municipal Maseratis for the governing body.
Damn.
The goal really is to take the money into what's now going to be the Recreation Trust and use it to reinvest into the fields, and thereby offset otherwise tax dollars would have to be raised for improvements. So I'll pick on and use PV Park as an example. PV Park had some financial challenges for a very long time. Over the last couple of years, that's been corrected through operational analysis, efficiencies, a minor increase in fees. All of a sudden now PV Park's running in the black. It's still in the recreation utility, which we're hopefully going to be folding up shortly, but if it were in the trust, as we're going to do with these fees, the profit, right, because government should be run like a business, though it's impossible to do that, but the idea with the profit is to reinvest it back into the facility. So all of this, again, is intended to try to make things better for everybody. And you know, the goal was never to earn profit on the use of fields. We're never going to earn profit on the use of fields. Anybody that works in the private sector doing landscaping, compare your cost to mine and you'll giggle a lot. But that said, it's just to try to move the ball in the right direction.
And Adam, one last thing to build upon that. I mean, if the organizations in town can also help raise money, we can get that extra, 90-foot field. We can get that extra lit field that we need in the fall. We can get, lit multi-purpose field, or, it's a stretch, but another turf field. They're expensive. But if we can get all groups to start raising money and we go towards that and put that into the rec utility specifically for those things, we can get them done quicker. So with your help, we can all work together. That's all I got.
So just to be clear, so I don't miss any direction, is everybody on the same page, and do I have direction from council regarding the time period with respect to reservations? So should this move forward, because again, it's kind of contingent upon that, but if as tied to this, does everybody on council want to see a break, and I'll bring it back to council as a discussion item to exactly finalize how that would work, but a break in terms of who reserves when.
Right.
And then,
You think they need 2 weeks? Nobody's shaking their heads. 2 weeks ahead of time?
I would say so.
I think a week might be tight.
Is a week good, or no? You definitely want... Okay, so we'll do 2 weeks, maybe? Everybody do it 2 weeks in advance?
I'm good with 2
I agree
weeks.
with that.
2
That
weeks
was
in
my-
advance, they get...
2 weeks in advance, they get to schedule theirs.
I talked to Adam about that before. That was my only thing, was I wanted the
We've
Pequannock
always
team
said
to be
that.
able,
And I think that
we
was
always
his-
said that
But
from the
remember,
beginning. So 2 weeks
that's,
works.
when you say Pequannock be able, so now it's Patriots,
Right.
Crunch, Axe.
well, what I
Yeah.
want to do is I want to take a look at it and not on the fly.
Right.
But if that's the direction from council, I'll go back. We'll come up with a construct to try to make it work. I'll bring it back to council. We'll talk about it. If it works, great. If it needs to be tweaked, it can be tweaked.
Right.
Perfect.
But either way, all these groups have to start getting their paperwork in.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
once we
so-
approve this,
so if you're
there's going to be a
501(c)(3),
time
get your
frame.
paperwork in.
Right.
If you're going to
Get your ducks in a
certify
row.
that you're non-selective.
There's a lot of...
There'll be an
There's a lot of people here that are here for this specific reason.
And I know they'll spread the
We only
word.
had one person stand up.
Right.
I would like to see, we maybe open it up 15 minutes just for public comment now, rather than make them wait and us make decisions now about what we're going to do.
But the only thing we're doing is agreeing to move it forward to have a public discussion, and then we're going to advertise that we're having a public discussion.
I guess is the majority of you guys.
Did we miss
you're
anything?
But with the
forward?
people being here, is it a big deal to let them speak? It's not like,
It's not. It's up to you guys. Again,
let them speak, not that you're going to engage in conversation. Well, that's true, public comments afterwards.
Yeah. Can you guys hang out for a little bit till we get to public comment a little bit later?
It's a quick meeting, we'll go, yeah.
This way you can mull it over,
So stay
make sure we
here
didn't
for
forget
public
anything. Maybe afterwards. All right.
Okay, there are no public hearings scheduled for this evening. Next on the agenda is the introduction of ordinance. Ms. Marsh.
This is ordinance number 2021-15, an ordinance amending chapters 152 and 237 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Pequannock related to field usage.
So we're going to table that, right?
Mr. No, so what we're doing is we're agreeing to introduce it as an ordinance, okay? So we introduce it so that next week there's a public comment, and next week we vote on the ordinance itself.
And in the meantime...
Next meeting, in 2 weeks.
Right.
So we're just agreeing to introduce it. Once we introduce it, we put out a public notice, and the public notice that we're going to have a public discussion. It doesn't mean you can't talk about it today, or call us during the week, or send us emails. We will still take it, but this is to let everybody know. That's why when everybody would say, oh, you guys are sneaking this in, we're like, nope, we discussed it, we're introducing it for ordinance, we vote on it in 2 weeks. Does that make sense? Oh, good, I'm getting head shakes.
In the meantime, we can still tweak the verbiage like
We
that.
need to let everyone know that's
Right.
not here that we're introducing it so they can come.
I'm going to throw one more thing out there.
Okay.
What if we have a kid that can't afford to pay?
But that's a personal thing with the
So-
teams, right?
so-
I think each
so
team
what
does
do-
something. I
what do
know
we do?
I know lacrosse does stuff.
I know
the
lacrosse
Patriots
does, I know the Boys and Girls
Crunch
Club.
does it. I think they all do
Do
something.
they do, the organizations, are they willing to help with a kid that doesn't pay?
I think all kids have.
Heard of one that doesn't.
Right, they all do. They all give.
they're all-
They give shoes. They give bats. They give gloves. They give lacrosse stuff. They give.
I was just going to go down the path that if they do have two kids that don't pay and the fee was $120, I think that $120 should come off of their field usage fee or whatever it is, but we'll move on with that.
Right, but you have to remember the field usage fee is free for practices and $40 for
An average game, a 2-hour
an
game.
average game,
yeah.
2-hour game. Is there a motion to introduce this ordinance on first reading?
Okay, I'll make that motion. No, sorry. You want it?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2021-15.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Dracy?
Yes.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes. The next agenda item is resolutions. Ms. Marsh.
Beginning with Resolution R 2021-213, confirming the transfer of membership in the Pequannock Township Fire Department for Nolan Bound. 2021-214, appointing members of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. 215, approving the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual Employee Handbook of the Township of Pequannock. 2021-216, authorizing tax office refunds, overpayments, or cancellations. And 2021-217, approving payment of the itemized claims as set forth on the October 7th, 2021 bill list.
Are there any comments on these resolutions from council?
Nope.
Is there a motion to adopt these
I'll
resolutions?
make a resolution to adopt ordinance 2021-2013 through 2021-2017.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dracy?
Yes.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes. There are no items listed for discussion, and there are no reports or notices. The next agenda item is council reports and announcements. Councilman Derisi?
I do not have anything.
Councilwoman Florence Lynch?
I don't really have anything, just that the flood committee is meeting this Thursday at 7:30. And other than that, I have nothing.
Councilman Hurd?
Yes, Mayor. I just have a couple of quick things. I wasn't prepared
You need a
because
minute?
they went really
I
quick.
know, she was very, should I skip to Councilman Cole?
Yeah, right.
While you look up your stuff?
Okay, so historic committee meeting. Township Museum is going to reopen October 22nd, November 7th, and the 24th. An issue that we keep on been dealing with is the amount of garbage that's around the train station. It has gotten better since the kids have gone back into school, but it's still something that, we're fighting. I don't know how to solve that problem. We have DPW going out there cleaning it up.
Is there still one of those expensive garbage cans there?
There is 2 garbage cans that I
Do they
counted
get
last
full, or
time.
do they just don't even try to put it in there?
I haven't seen them overflowing. During the pandemic, I did see them overflowing, but then DPW has done a great job of hitting it a couple of times.
Right.
No, I'm always seeing kids hanging out over there, but I think it's something that we just got to keep telling them. You got to pick up your stuff. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for them. And we need pride in Pequannock.
Well, now,
all of us.
now that it's opening back up, there'll be more people there.
Yeah.
And, just say.
So I would love any suggestions that anybody has. I don't know what else to do on that one. Okay, that's it for that. First Aid Squad. I'd like to congratulate a new senior member, Kevin, I'm not even going to try this last name, Gyongyosi. He is the newest member of the Monday night crew, so congratulations for coming in. I did have we had 76 calls the month of September. So as usual, our first aid squad is doing great, and I really appreciate everything that they do. And lastly, again, Little League, I know we beat this one up. We've talked about it and everything, but I do agree. Number one, as we spoke about the tiers, making sure that our Pequannock kids get first dibs and get that 2-week time frame on the schedule like we talked about. That 90%, I do like that. A little bit of flexibility. I do understand the 90 to 100, so you can work on that. Another suggestion that was interesting was structured time slots for Washington Park. And I have seen this happen where somebody will use from 6 to 9, which basically kills the field for the entire time. And I don't know how hard it is, but, a 4 to 6, a 6 to 8, and then an 8 to 10, where they have to physically pick that and they can't make up their own time. So this way you can get 3 slots for each one of Washington Park 1, 2, and 3. I don't know how hard that is because that's more of a website thing. So, but I thought that was a great suggestion.
It's something to be looked into. So.
Yeah, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Cole?
I just want to remind everyone that this Saturday, October 16th, is the Hoedown. I believe it's from 11 to 5. Company 1 beefsteak is 10/16, same night as the Hoedown at the Bloomingdale Fire Department. Not sure if you can still get tickets, but if you need to, you can speak to any Company 1 firemen. Company 2 Fish and Chips is on October 21st. At the Pequannock Fire Department. You can either eat in or take out. Again, if you would like to participate in that, reach out to any Company 2 fireman. 10/23, Company 2 is having a cornhole tournament at PV Park. And I just wanted to say, that thank you to the West Point Black Hawk parachuters. I mean, that was quite an amazing... I would have liked to seen them come in with the game ball, but coming in at halftime because they had some helicopter.
Dave, I heard that you were going to go up there and
problems. No, Ryan, I wouldn't even jump if I was strapped to someone. But it was amazing to see those guys jump, and we had a great crowd at the football game that night, and great turnout of vets because it was Vet Appreciation Day. They showed all of the pictures of all of the vets that have graduated from Pequannock High School. They gave some renderings of what where they would like to display and how they would like to display them. It's going to be quite a project. I can't wait to get started and to get it going. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That's awesome. Band competition is also this Saturday. What time does it start, Ryan?
Starts at 5 o'clock. We have 12 bands. It's going to go through like 8 or 9 o'clock. It's going to be amazing.
So that's
it's going to be a crazy day.
And for anybody who attended the Rosary Walk the other day, even though it was in the rain, it was a great turnout. It really was quite nice.
It was.
I really enjoyed it, actually. Everybody walked from the Knights of Columbus to Holy Spirit, and we said the Rosary as we did, and then when we got there, they did the Rosary again, and it was just very uplifting at a time when prayers really can't hurt, so it was a good thing.
Thank you to the police department for all their help.
Yes, and the police department, we had a police department in front, a police department in back. It was really nice. Next on the agenda is public comment. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized and come to the microphone and provide your name and address for the record.
Come on, guys. We want to hear from you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Cook, 29 Manor Ave, Pompton Plains. I would like to say, as a coach of Little League softball, my wife coaches Pequannock travel soccer. My son plays Patriots baseball. I'm just kind of curious about the fees. As a coach, I'm concerned of when am I going to charge a parent, and how am I going to charge a parent? Will be an upfront fee where we know Little League's going to play 18 games as a team this season, and we figure that out across there, whereas when the coach schedules the practice, over the game schedules, are we going to do that? So my problem is, when do we collect it from parents and when do we charge parents for that? So that's just a concern I have with dealing with the parents.
How far in advance do you guys get your traveling schedule?
travel is a challenge sometimes with both soccer and baseball, and that also goes for fall Little League. We've had our challenges this year. It depends on how the coaches communicate with each other, to be honest. In the beginning of the season, I think for Pequannock soccer, we are able to schedule out better, and there isn't a lot of change. Fall Little League was very challenging this year with Clifton dropping out their 4 teams, and then trying to get Wayne to come here because they do not have lights. So that's just something that happens. And then I don't know if we get reimbursed, say, for fees as well. Like we have a field, but a whole town drops out.
Believe me, you'll get reimbursed because we see that all the time, reimbursement for,
But that's all.
I'd like to work that out, but that's a
Right.
different story.
I mean, my personal thoughts on that would, how many home games you're going to book, and then figure out how many hours, divide that by your number of parents, and collect it at
So like an
beginning.
upfront fee
Yeah.
at the beginning. Okay. That would make it a lot easier.
But
I think.
yes, exactly.
A lot of stress on the coach.
So you could do that, and then obviously if you don't use a field, there's reimbursements, correct?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
You can't tell what I'm here to talk about.
You can.
I helped out with the sweatshirt. My name's George McGrory, 21 Dale Ave. I'm currently volunteer president of the Pequannock Soccer Club. It's a great gig if you want another volunteer role. Awesome. So just 3 quick things. First, the soccer club has historically contributed financially to the greater good of the township at large. We buy the high school soccer goals. We buy, I've been in this role for a year and a half, so I'm told some of this. I can't say I have documentation for all of it, but we have contributed financially to a number of things. Field repairs, goals, nets, Greenview Park fencing, we offered to try to partially fund that to help with the ditch where the balls go in. So we've made repeated efforts, both concrete with funding and with offers to fund multiple different things. So in my humble opinion, I think that puts us in a similar stead as Little League. So the carve out, I think, would be appropriate for the soccer club.
Yeah,
So-
anybody who can do that is welcome to.
And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
If you guys are investing in the fields, that offsets the cost, you know? I think that's perfect.
But that's something I guess you're going to have to be in discussion with in some sort of agreement.
So there has to be a formal agreement articulated.
There has to be a
so
formal
there's
agreement, you're going to spend
actually
X
something
amount
around.
on,
Yeah, understood.
But there's an
so everybody
opportunity toward
understands.
that.
We'd
as opposed
also,
to not.
we'd also like to see, like, for example, we funded in part the field improvements at Gerace, and if you've been over there and you've seen the soccer fields, they're not in great shape. Which brings me to my second point. The fields are used by Parks and Rec Soccer. That's a carve out in the proposed ordinance, as I see. So we play on the same fields. We pay for the fields, they do not, and they have double the registrants that we do. So their games on Saturday are on the same fields that we play on Sunday. So we're paying $40 per game for fields that are used twice as much as we use them, which puts them in disrepair roughly right around now, 3 or 4 weeks into our season. So we're paying for something, and we're not really, I mean, in my opinion, it's hard to pay for a field when, as a coach, you walk onto the field and the opposing teams come and they look at your field and they're like, really? Like, this is the field? It's a little embarrassing. So,
Unfortunately, that's been going on for years.
yeah.
That's why we need
And I'm
turf
not saying
fields.
there's an easy solution. I'm just
And
voicing my
and again, to
I'm not saying I have
reiterate,
the answers.
the cost does not cover the cost to manage the fields. So it's not as if, in your analogy, you're paying the full freight of this and getting the short end of the stick. There's a nominal financial participation to create some ownership and an opportunity to make things better. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that for some reason the Board of Ed didn't turn the water on a couple of years, and we've been trying to work on those communication issues. But obviously there's significant cost to the Parks and Recreation Department of the Township of Pequannock that's above and beyond and not included in that per hour fee. So again, it's not necessarily getting the short end of the stick, it's a collaborative effort to make it as good as possible.
got it. I guess I'm just trying to say I'd hope that we get more for paying more. And then with regard to the Fall Classic tournament, this fee structure, as I see it, would essentially eliminate the proceeds that we as a club generate from the tournament. All of our proceeds are invested in player development. So many people in town, and maybe I think some council members have kids who are in the program or who have been in the program. Every dollar we make goes back to the kids. We pay trainers, we pay for development programs, soccer camps. It's a registered nonprofit. Our books are open. So, as I see it, this fee structure would basically put the Fall Classic in the position where we would pay $8,000 for field usage fees for 2 days when the fields in town are generally not in use over Columbus Day weekend. So, the way I look at it, having those fields empty versus filled with kids playing soccer is a detriment. So I don't see that as being positive. That's it.
Is there something that we could carve out for tournaments?
Well, I've met with Mr. McGrory, so I'm surprised that it's not remembered, but the idea behind the tournament was, the challenge associated with it was, we, the township, were incurring costs in the $8,000 to $10,000 range, and the idea was, every organization doesn't have the opportunity to have the township subsidize their fundraiser, and I appreciate that the money goes back to the participants, and that's fantastic. But the idea was to create a construct where if we were incurring significant costs, there would be some sort of sharing to that. If there's an opportunity to...
Proposed $5,500 for field setup, for garbage removal, for setting up goals, painting the lines for Columbus Day weekend.
If there's
those fields are set up already for our fall season,
if there's
and
an
for Parks
opportunity
and Rec.
for a unique
So we would be
agreement
double
to
paying.
handle a tournament and have an effective thing, that could be something that could be uniquely worked out, as opposed to any concern associated with the fees, because that would be a unique event.
Yeah, I remember the meeting. I got the proposed fees. So as I look at it, the $5,700 in proposed fees plus the $8,000 for the field usage fees that doesn't add up to the numbers that we discussed.
I just provided you an answer.
Okay, sounds good.
Something uniquely could be agreed upon.
Anyone else?
Pat Gilligan, I'm at 4 Leland Ave in Pompton Plains, and thank you all for your service and what you're doing. A lot of us here are performing a service too as volunteer coaches, I just want to bring up 2 points, one technical and one conceptual. That 90% threshold we were talking about, I think that's really something you should consider. The 100%, while it's very clear cut that everyone would have to be from Pequannock, it's not feasible sometimes. You could have a team fold because you're missing like 1 or 2 players, and that's where we would work, and different groups would work with people in other towns to pull in another player or 2. And then you're having experience for, let's say, 10 kids plus 2, instead of those 10 kids not having a place to play. So I think you should really consider that. I did a little polling with some other clubs, and in one of their towns, they have something similar. I think they were using a 75%. And just conceptually, Mr. Brewer, before you asked the question, do people want to pay for things? No. I say yes. If it's going to improve the conditions, then organizations are willing to pay for things. I'm just concerned about the administrative complexity that this would introduce. The point we were talking about with Mr. Cook before, trying to figure out in advance all your practices, games, the fees associated with that, then setting a fee for the parents of the participants. That's a lot of overhead all of a sudden. So just wanted to think about it. I think, at least for the Pequannock Soccer Club and some of the other organizations, we'd probably err more towards that Little League exception, because I think that'll be more feasible to work things out.
And you wouldn't pay for practice?
You wouldn't pay for practices.
Well, yeah, but right now, the way that I'm just being realistic that if you kept it at 100% threshold, then I think a lot of groups would, because kids also move, and again, we don't want to have a whole team fold.
Work on that.
Just to,
I totally agree on that.
Yeah, and I was more thinking, because if the Crunch and Patriots are now selective and they have to have an A team and a B team, if your A team's at 13, you're not going to have a roster of 17, because that's not fair to the kids playing. So then you'd have to do a B team, and then maybe you'll have 11 and 9, but whatever, so both can take the field. And to make that 9, instead of overcrowding your roster, you can pull kids from another town.
yeah.
Or not having a team because you're 1 or 2 kids short.
Right.
Like in, Crunch or
Right.
soccer, I'd like
Because,
to have them play.
Ask every kid,
Right.
nobody wants to be the 16th kid on the bench.
How many kids are on a soccer field? 11?
It varies based upon
age?
the little kids. It's like 7. Then you move up, it goes to 9. Then you get to 11 by the time you get older. That's where it's a little different than like football or baseball, where it's the same.
I'd like to see 80% rather than 90%. That's just me.
Yeah, and although I shouldn't kick myself in the bruise, we have unfortunately a lot of experience for anybody that pays a sewer utility bill or a water utility bill working on complex rate structures. So if there's any discussion anybody wants to have, and maybe the best way to try to figure out how to do that, we'd be happy to work with whatever organization to figure out how to come up with a rate.
Okay, I mean, it's all about communication. I mean, if you have 9 girls or 9 boys that want to play, and you come to Parks and Rec or Adam and say, hey, listen, you know what? We have 9 Pequannock kids that want to play. We need to reach out for 2 this year. Okay, you know what? To me, I think we'd all agree.
Right.
Go ahead.
As long as
Reach
you're
out
not
to
turning
2
any
out of-
Pequannock kids down,
Reach out to your 2 out-of-towners.
Yeah, the one challenge in terms of the administration of that is the staff doesn't have the ability to waive ordinances.
Right. It has to be clear.
So the staff, I appreciate the thought, but the staff can't just say, go get the 2 people. So if that's something legislatively that the governing body wants to include in the ordinance, whether it's 90%, 80%, again, whatever number the governing body wants to move forward with, that would have to be something within the ordinance, because otherwise, our hands are tied. One of the complaints we get regularly is someone's a day or 2 late on a tax, their tax bill, and they get upset. Why can't you just waive it? Well, it's state statute. We just can't. Right. So as frustrating as it is, and as much authority as my office might have, I can't waive statute, I can't waive municipal ordinance or code.
Could we?
No. Yeah. You have to give yourself that in the ordinance.
Yeah, council can provide for that.
Or you could put in something for some other mechanism, but it would have to be, my recommendation would be to try to create something that wouldn't require exception.
Right.
Because then you have person A that's aware of exception, takes advantage of it, person B that doesn't, just pays it. Now we have disparity and people who are getting hurt feelings, and we don't really want that.
That's why I like the 90%.
So-
It gives you a little bit of flexibility.
Right,
And
so let's just make it
90% and less than
90%
90%.
instead of 100%, and then 50 to 90.
I don't even know if we need 50 to 90.
Procedurally,
Wouldn't it just be
Bob,
less
if we
than
wanna make a
90?
change, we gotta...
Let's finish public hearing, and if that's the only change the
90
council
is-
wants to do, we'll just...
90 is one person if it's a team of 10.
Right, but based on my conversations today,
It's not based on person.
I haven't heard of situations where they need more than one.
It's for the whole,
Okay.
Yeah, if you get 200 people participating, it's...
Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay, so do we want to make it 90%?
Well,
I would say
Bruce's recommendation is if there's any other comments that you want to
Yeah,
consider.
is there anything, are we done?
Justin Ciesta, 34 2nd Street. One of my friends here in the audience had a good question. We're talking about the 90% of the roster. Is the organizational roster or the team roster?
Organizational.
Right.
So it'd be Patriots, Crunch, everybody as a whole?
Correct.
So,
Well,
Patriots.
Patriots.
No, it would be whatever the organization is. Sorry,
Right.
so if it's Patriots, it's all of the participants in the Patriots.
So if you have 120 kids in Patriots, it's 90% of the 120.
okay, so
Or
it's
you could
not...
have 10% filler.
That's the easiest way to administer.
Right, so I look at a Crunch, right? My daughter obviously involved in Crunch, and so we look at it that way. So our 12U roster has 13 kids right now.
It's not 90% of the 13, it's 90% of the entire Crunch. You have 6 teams, it's 90% of the entire 16s, correct?
Okay.
That was my
Right.
interpretation. It's about an organization, it's not about an individual team, because we don't want to run the organizations that you guys do a good job with. That's not the goal of this.
It's supposed to give a little bit of
But
flexibility.
we also, have to be careful of those who have, the 6U is all Pequannock, 7U is all Pequannock, 8U is all Pequannock, 9U is all Pequannock, the 10U is all Lincoln Park. Or it's a mixture of Wayne, Lincoln Park, Pequannock, because somebody wanted that all-star team, and they can do that under this because they have 100 people on their roster, so therefore they can have 10 out-of-towners.
How about we do this? Don't abuse it, guys. If you abuse it, we're going to change the rules.
We're not the ones abusing it, sitting here.
I know that. I totally get it, but that's why we're having
My
this
question to
conversation.
you is, do you think people will abuse it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Somebody said somebody's abusing it already.
No,
Who
the
said
people
that?
that abuse it are not sitting here.
Oh, okay.
So somebody's going to abuse it.
Right. No, I understand, but...
So why don't we
I think
make
at
it
some point-
95%, so then if they have 100 people on their roster, then that is only that one or two kids to make the team.
I like 90.
I'm going with 90.
90? Okay, we'll do 90.
And again,
Quick
with
question,
respect to
Mayor.
the council and everybody, it doesn't have to be perfect. If we realize there are issues, it can be modified, amended moving forward. It's a good starting point. So if there are issues with abuse for those absent or present, just to cast everybody, then it can be modified, amended, or we can work to correct it again. So that's, not something that
Okay,
can't be addressed.
so 90, everybody?
So where are we going to start?
I would say 90.
90.
and-
Yeah, more comment.
We'll go at 90. Okay.
Yes.
Glenn Corman, 7 Voorhees Place. With regard to scheduling for games, you have a 2-hour limit or a 2-hour proposed time frame. I mean, for baseball, it's not enough. Games are 2 hours. You get there an hour early to warm up. Are we charged for that warm-up time?
I would say that's considered practice, no?
My intention would be the games would be the games.
Would you still be able to register, though, on the Community Pass site for that time? How do you differentiate between the warm-up time and the game time? Because you're blocking out a time frame for that actual competition.
Is it usually a 3-hour reservation?
It could be however much you're deciding to reserve it for. Right now, it's open to...
What's it typically, though, in your experience?
Games are about 2.5, as the boys get older, about 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Potentially. And
Hopefully.
if you add in an hour for warm-up, let's just say, now you're at 3.5 hours.
So just for clarity,
So how do you reserve that on?
reserve for the game and reserve for practice beforehand, because maybe there's a game before you on Washington Park 3, so you reserve 2 for your practice.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep, but how about even then when you get to Town Hall where you have outside teams playing there and they reserve it for longer? Because right now, we play on Sundays. I play there on Sundays, let's say from 9 to 1. Days are getting shorter, so we're trying to get our games in there as well.
Right,
So we're trying
right.
to go, let's say, from 1 till 4.
So you're saying in a situation where you only have
I just
one,
wanna know
like
how
the
much we're being
190
charged. If
field?
we're trying to project what our costs are going to be, how do we, and we're going to reserve 2 weeks in advance, and as Mr. Cook was saying before, it gets difficult to schedule games as you get older because you're trying to coordinate with other coaches.
Yeah.
So how do we differentiate reserving for that time frame and what we're being charged for, going forward?
Every sport has practice before a game, too.
Yeah, but are you being charged, yeah, so I mean, it's warm-up time, are you being charged for that?
So how should they do that?
So how do you do that on the?
So for every 2-hour game, you get an hour free?
Or they're going to have to sign up twice, once for practice and once for...
The question, the ordinance is currently constructed to say for a game, this is the hourly fee, for a practice, this is the hour fee. So if you're reserving for warm-up, I would say reserve for warm-up, and there's no fee. If you're reserving for playing the game with the Blues in uniform, then that would be what you would be charged.
And if you go over on your time?
There's not going to be a parking meter. It's not like we're running around, you went 15 minutes over, you're getting gigged. I mean, we all know fields are reserved. Sometimes you got to wait because there was an issue, somebody got injured.
So can a grace period just be built into your reservation time, knowing that you're paying for a 2-hour game and you can?
We'll logistically have to work that out, yeah.
Okay, just because it's more time and effort that coaches have to put in, volunteer coaches.
Right.
To actually go onto the website and book everything.
Right, so
on there
logistically, there'll be a way to work. I mean, there was a question also about creating fixed time slots, and that way you're not juggling an hour here, an hour here. We got to see if Community Pass will do it.
That's extremely difficult too, just with the
amount of organizations, the amount of times that you're trying to coordinate with another team. You put full sports in there, people have soccer, football, baseball, you're trying to juggle a lot, and it's hard enough to get a game time for one day.
It's not an easy thing to fix.
Yeah.
Get coaches too who want to do all this. Absolutely. Now, talking about volunteer coaches within the town, now have to manage the
Come on up to the mic, please, and well, we want to hear it. That's why we're here, right? We want to hear it. Come on up.
Hello, Michael Bertuna, 8 Riddle Road. I guess the simple answer to me would be everyone over here would like the council to vote no on this proposal. It's, we already pay our taxes, and it just seems like you want to add a fee to these organizations that are mostly all for the Pequannock kids. So I would just ask the council to vote no for it and come up with a different strategy.
So just one comment, Mike. If we vote no, then we keep what we have, which is a system that's being gamed, and you guys are getting kicked off of fields because you don't have access to fields. You want that to still exist?
Well, maybe we do the structure where you're just not charging us more money. I mean, you could figure out a way to have the fields being booked without charging us more money.
I think we got that carve out, right? So getting classified as tier 1, you got your nonprofit, your Pequannock kids, you're not a club team. So I think we got that carve out, right? So you could be just like Little League and not pay anything.
Yeah, then I just don't see the point of everything that's going on. And eventually, it's just like adding another tax, and you guys are just going to take more money from us, and that's it.
I totally agree.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we have clarity, so everybody understands, that's all.
I don't think anyone likes it.
David Ortega, 49 4th Street here in Pequannock. It seems to me that we're trying to fix a system that you guys are stating is broken at this point in time. But we're trying to fix the system by asking the taxpayers of this town to throw money at it. And I don't think that's the way to fix the system. Fix the system and how we're able to log on. Fix the system and how we're able to book fields in that aspect. But don't hurt the people, because what's going to happen is that funding, that extra funding that you're looking for these groups to pay for, that's all going to go back on the people that actually sign up for these teams. So really, you're just hurting the people that live here. So that's one point. And my second point is, I think that it doesn't make any sense. We're asking the people that currently work and volunteer on these teams to do more work for what? I don't get it. And that's my 2 points.
But you always scheduled your fields.
Excuse me?
You always scheduled your fields, correct?
The team scheduled the fields?
Right.
But fix the physical software, fix the system. Maybe we don't use Community Pass. I don't know. We'll have to use
But yeah, because some people mention it as a tax. It's not a tax. It's a user fee for the people who are using the fields.
Which will get passed down to the people who play on the teams.
Minimally, $24 a season. Some it's completely free.
It still doesn't make
It's a minimal to override the cost. It doesn't even account for the cost of the lining of the fields and getting the fields ready and getting the fields prepped.
So if it doesn't account for the cost, then why add the fee?
Because there has to be value, right? Because one of the issues now is that it's free. So when something is free, people are taking all the fields, and then when they don't have a game, they're not releasing them back into the pool. So now that's when you drive past. I've driven past. Nobody's on the field, and I could have used that field for practice. So how do I fix that?
So maybe you fix the software and limit how people are able to schedule, but don't charge the teams for that.
But there's got to be skin in the game from everybody. With that said, having the carve out for the groups in town, just like Little League, everybody could be at par. So it's just paperwork, and you need the grass seed, or some people get new whatever, lacrosse or whatnot goals, that's your carve out. So now you're down to 0 and everybody's happy, and now we're minimizing any of the abuse to the system because we're also fixing the back end. So we're fixing all these things that we also spoke about too. And does that make sense?
I understand your point. I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
Okay.
Hi, Peter.
Hello. My name is Peter Schmidt, 16 Manor Avenue. Let me try to represent all the people that don't participate in these games and still pay taxes in this community. I don't mind at all paying the taxes and seeing all these little kids running around. It's really enjoyable to say. But on the other hand, I think a good compromise is the right thing to do. And I see the struggle from all sides, keeping it simple and being just and all things, but I think at the end, a good compromise is the best for everybody in this community. Okay?
Thanks,
Peter.
Anyone else?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Eddie Dammer, 6 Washburn Road. So just hearing what I heard tonight, to me, I've heard it said like 5 times, this ordinance is not perfect, it's still in development. To me, it seems very rushed. So why are we doing something that we know we're going to have to fix? Let's get it right, then you vote on it, and then it makes sense. You don't have to switch it a million times. You don't have to vote on it. It just seems rushed. And that's just from hearing what I heard tonight. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Jason Friedman, 12 Elizabeth Avenue. When is the ordinance look to try to get put in place?
2022.
Okay, so in January. Okay. So I'm in an interesting position myself. First and foremost, I have 2 boys that are in the Patriots Club program, and they've been in it for 4 or 5 years, but I'm also a Little League board member. So I understand both sides of it and the push-pull that I've seen and talked to friends that are in different organizations, whether it's lacrosse or soccer, and they're asking questions about why Little League was drawn out. I understand why we were drawn out because of our financial commitment that we've provided, at least for the last 3 years that myself and the other board members have been in place. But what's difficult to understand is when we took over as a board and where we are today, we've increased registration by almost 100 kids, both boys and girls, okay? All of the kids for now shift to the club side that are Crunch and Patriots, the obligation for that 90%, if we're going to use that as the number, all have to go through our Little League program first, okay? So what you're telling those families and those kids is, if you play Little League, everything's fine. But as soon as you now make the decision to play in a summer or spring club program, now you're going to have to pay for those fields to participate. To try to justify a dollar amount for a game versus being part of that tier 1 where you work with each organizational club and come up with a number, whether it's annually or over a course of 4 or 5 years, to say we're going to contribute X dollars to the bottom line to help support the town's field upkeep, new projects, etc., and do away with actually having to charge per game. That would be much more justifiable, because from a planning standpoint, and I look at these other clubs very similar to Little League because I know how much time it is to try to raise money for the Little League. It would give them more time, more structure, and understanding what that potential agreed to, I don't want to say it's a donation, but what that capital improvement number would be for that particular group versus having to go game by game or practice to practice. The other thing is, from my point of view, and we want to obviously put our kids and our families and our volunteers first, these other teams that come into play that are out of town, I would gouge them as it relates to how much it's going to cost them to use our fields, because other towns are doing the same thing. Especially in the fall where the ball fields are being used less because there's not as much activity related to baseball and softball. These towns are coming in and they're booking all 3 fields 3 nights a week. So anyone or any of the town teams that want to have access to it, whether it's Crunch, Patriots, or our Little League Fall program, have to kind of go around them because it's first come, first served with the community pass. So that's where it gets difficult, and you can only book. You can never adjust by saying, okay, I can't make that practice, but oh shoot, so now I have to reach to Barb or Amy to take the reservation off to allow someone else to use it. So if there is a way where we can self-manage it as a coach or as a club, that may be better off.
Right. And I think the 2 weeks in advance that you have to book the fields will definitely help.
I think
that.
at minimum
That's going to
you
be
have to do
huge.
2 weeks, because I just know when the 28th, as it is now, when the 28th comes, where you can now book the next month when it's springtime and you have softball, Little League, baseball, Little League, and the coaches, it's to the coach's discretion to book those fields. At 12 o'clock on the 28th, if you're not there within the first half hour, you're cooked.
Right.
So that's to the point where you talked about where you may want to allocate 2-hour time clip for practice.
Right.
That may be beneficial because right now you can book by the half hour.
Right.
Right, and that messes up the entire
schedule.
time. And again, to your point, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Sure.
Right? Little League has put a ton of money into those fields, and you keep on doing it, right? We've got the bathrooms going in over by 3, that's a ton of stuff. Now, I don't expect, pick whoever group you want, that they're going to do that kind of investment. Everybody is much, much smaller. They don't have 600 kids going
100%.
through. But if Pequannock Soccer wants to bring seed in to reseed every fall, seed's expensive, right? So, and that's where that agreement is, where they can be that tier 1.
Whatever it is.
Don't have to pay.
Yeah, and whatever sport it is, as long as the inclusion is there for all of our kids.
Exactly.
Whether it's soccer, lacrosse, softball, baseball, if the kids are playing, and to your point, you don't want to drive by fields that are empty.
Right.
You want to use them.
Exactly.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also agree we need to raise those rates for the out-of-town. I think it's a bargain.
I think we are raising them.
A little bit.
Out of town. I think they are raised
I
enough
think
for
it
now.
needs to go higher.
Are there any other public comments?
No problem.
Joseph Scabala, 16 Prospect Ave. I'm just wanting to follow up and see what the situation is with the Tavern 5 parking situation, if there's been any resolution, any decisions made. I've started coming here back in the summer. I was not able to make the last couple of council meetings, but I wanted to hear from the council what the situation is.
I believe the police is monitoring it,
Yeah,
and they...
Administratively, occupancy continues to be managed by code enforcement and the zoning officer. The enforcement with respect to the painting of the no parking areas on the turnpike by the police department is regular, so we're keeping an eye on it. The authorization of the resolution expires at the end of the year. It's starting to get cold, so that will be something that will go away. And that, once December happens, or once ever it's cold and people want to sit outside. So as of right now, all the enforcement elements are being monitored, and if there's any violations, they're being addressed.
Because I'm on Prospect, and I'm the 5th house in from the turnpike. Coming here, I left my house just before 7 o'clock to make it to the council meeting, and I counted 8 cars on between my house and the turnpike. Okay, so the parking situation, and it's not even a busy night at Tavern 5 tonight. Tuesdays are not the busiest night. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are the worst nights. I almost hit a vehicle backing out of my own driveway because it was 5 or 6 feet overlapping into my driveway from my side yard. And because I was coming here, I didn't do anything. If that car is still here, I will call the police but that is a situation that we deal with 3 to 5 nights a week.
Yeah, and the challenge there is there's an existing law that prohibits that from being the case. So legislatively, I wouldn't have a recommendation for the council. If there's someone who's parking across your driveway, that's against the law. That police department doesn't address.
That's what I'm trying to understand, but back in July and August when we were here, I had recommended a possibility of residential permit parking, to resolve the issue because from a resident that's affected by the parking situation, by their inadequate parking or by seating more than they're allocated for, it is a regular problem for us, and whatever steps are taken, the turnpike painting is great, but all that did is force more traffic onto the side streets. So it didn't help our situation, it actually made it worse.
And that was in response to the safety concerns.
No, and there was definitely a safety concern.
So the goal wasn't to say, okay, we're going to get you
I
now.
understand that.
I just want to make sure
You're
it's
in
clear.
a challenging position because you're trying to satisfy the residents and you also have a business. But it hasn't improved. Granted, as the weather gets colder, the parking will probably die down a little bit, and as they close the outdoor seating, that will help, but it's only a temporary situation. In the springtime,
it's going to come back.
It's going to come back, and,
But they won't have the tent in the spring. Is that
Yeah,
expires?
the seating dynamics associated with the COVID-19 restrictions will go away.
Will go away, so they won't
that'll
have
change
an
that
extra
element.
tent.
But as I
they
said to
still have
Mrs.
capacity.
And as I said to
They
Mrs.
still have
Scribala, this existed before COVID-19, and I perceive it will exist after COVID-19.
Right.
And we can-
we need
we're
to
looking for
explore.
a more permanent solution to a problem that continues to affect the residents, not only on my street, but on the turnpike and on all the other side streets, but on the closest street to the tavern. So it affects my street more.
And don't forget, we can go down that avenue of permit parking, but then the unintended consequences there is when you want to have everybody over for Columbus Day, none of your friends are going to have the permit parking, so they're going to have to park on Turnpike.
No,
there's ways.
There's a special, you're having a party, you come.
You apply for permits for that particular day.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Administratively, that presents a significant number of challenges.
Right.
From the staff's perspective, if there continue to be major issues with parking, the least costly solution would be prohibition of parking on one side of the street.
Yeah, but that won't fix the problem on my street. It'll fix it on one side of the street, not on...
Correct, but it allows for...
half of the problem.
It allows for driving, it allows for driving on the street, addresses the width.
Yeah.
Twice the distance down the street, only on one side of the street. So if I have a garage sale, I have to apply for a permit to have a garage sale. If I have a party, let me apply for a permit to have a party so I can have 10 residents that don't fit in my driveway to be able to park on the street.
Yeah, the challenge with the permit parking concept is what's been reported is there are issues with too many people parking on the street. So if it becomes too many people that we like parking on the street as opposed to too many people that are frequently in business parking on the street, you still have too many people parking on the street. So if it's really a safety issue, the permit parking doesn't actually address the problem, it just picks who gets to park. So that's one of the concerns operationally is if that's really the issue, it's not a viable solution. So, the engineering's still engaged, we're still talking about it, don't have an answer yet.
Okay.
But
We'll continue to come back and look for an update because, it'll be snowing out and that'll solve the problem, but only temporarily.
Right.
Certainly.
Okay, next on the agenda, we'd like to reintroduce the ordinance. Yes?
Well,
we'd have a discussion on exactly what.
yeah, we have to figure out exactly what this is going to be ordinance 2021-15, which we introduced tonight. I heard Tier A, which presently says 100% residents, D, 100% residents, and G, 100% residents. It seemed to be a desire with the council to make that 90% resident.
Correct.
Did I understand that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that the only change to the introduced ordinance?
Are we going to carve out time for...
Yeah, that's not...
But is that an administrative thing, or?
Yeah, that I don't think is in the ordinance, right,
That's not in the
Al?
ordinance.
Correct. That's something that can be handled administratively. But if the council wants to amend it and add it to the ordinance, then that's obviously the council's prerogative.
So it'll be 90% plus everywhere where it now says 100% plus.
Right. Because everything else was just administrative.
Not for everything, right? I mean, if you have a for-profit club team, we're going to say the same thing?
I don't know.
I think that's going against what we're...
Is it going to be just, tier A is just going to be 90 plus?
This is why this was harder than it
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get it, but I just don't want...
You want just tier A to be 90% plus?
John, which one are you referencing? E?
C, I think he's
No,
referencing, not...
Like G. Do we want G to be 90% resident, for-profit, and selective? I don't think so, right? I think we're more concerned about the town, the town-only teams, or the nonprofit.
But that is a town-only team, they're just for-profit and selective, but they're still town-only team.
Yeah, but for-profit is different, in my mind, than everybody, everybody can kind of play.
Usually for-profit is also like a club team, so you have to try out for it.
So what do you want to do, the A and C at 90%, so that non-selective and selective, not-for-profit resident teams? Or do you just want it to be A?
Not-for-profit selective.
Where it gets tricky.
I think,
non-selective.
again, the biggest carve-out, and I keep on picking on Little League, would be Little League-like, right? So anybody can come, as long as they're from Pequannock, and everybody can play. So how do we give them, and they're not-for-profit, so how do we give them the most love?
So that's
and then
A.
from there,
It's
that's
just
A.
That's just A, then you want to do?
So we'll just switch A.
I'm not seeing anything else that would really...
Okay.
So only A.
So you want A to be 90% plus resident.
Does that work?
Is anybody here from Crunch? Are you guys a legitimate nonprofit?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We have the paperwork, Jack English.
Perfect. Because we've heard you were, we heard you weren't.
No, we have the paperwork. I don't know if it's been submitted, but no.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to
You don't
do
know
that.
if it's been submitted to the town, or you don't know if it's been submitted to the IRS?
We are nonprofit, 503, one of those.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
We just don't know. I don't know if it's been handed in.
That's fine.
Okay.
Brewer over there.
Yeah.
And that's only we've only done that to try to avoid some fees. So it's something that we did not want to do because it costs us money to do that.
Right.
It's taking money away from our girls to try to meet your ordinance that you're putting in place.
Why are we talking?
We're spending money to
Well, every town has that ordinance, right? So Montville, every other town that I researched has that ordinance that starts with a nonprofit in-town kids and then goes up from there.
We play on Montville's fields.
But we shouldn't be
free as a
calling to
home
people in
team.
the audience.
I know, well, I didn't...
Here on Pequannock, so
Really?
we appreciate our folks in Montville for giving us that opportunity. We appreciate.
I look at all their, Montville is much more expensive than we are.
Yeah. Look,
And then
you talk about
even more for lit.
They also put a P there for us when we show up, because they feel bad for us.
Are you sure? I mean, not to disagree, I'll call the mayor, I went to school with them, so I'm gonna talk to them tomorrow, how do they do that carve-out? That's why I wanna,
Because we are part of their league. So as part of their league, they give us the field for.
so they're really giving their
But you pay to be in the league.
league field usage,
Correct.
not Pequannock.
We play there for free, but we cannot get fields. Count as the home team. And count as the home team.
It's interesting.
We will not play Montclair, we will play West Falls. We will play Montclair. We don't even play a Montville team.
Because based on their matrix, a lit field is $100 a
There's
game.
a Crunch team right now in Cedar Grove playing as the home team in Cedar Grove on an artificial field for free tonight.
Okay. I'll call Frank tomorrow. Just need to know how he's doing it.
Okay, so we're only switching A.
A is going to be 90% instead of, 90% plus instead of 100. And otherwise, we're leaving everything else alone.
But were we going to increase the cost for the out-of-town teams I thought we talked about?
Well, is there a desire to do that? Let's talk about that.
What were we
Anybody
at
that
last
want to
year?
do that?
Put it this way, it's not gonna, they're not gonna...
The current ordinance has...
They're not gonna not...
The current ordinance is
if we
$50
increase it more, right?
for games or practices. That's the current ordinance.
For out of town.
For out-of-town, correct.
And we raised it to 55 and,
65.
65.
yeah. You fine with it that way?
Wait, where are we going?
I think it should go up. What's that?
Is that per hour? Is that
Per hour.
55 an
hour.
hour for practice and 65 per hour for game. for out-of-towners.
That's what it is, 55 and 60.
Right.
You know the ratio.
Okay, so we need to,
We gotta bring everybody in.
no,
Yeah.
he just waved them up. We need to,
I mean, I'm not going to have
we can't do that.
Yeah,
Real
unfortunately.
quick, do you know the ratio out of town versus in-town bookings? To justify the costs, and then if you do increase the cost for out of towns, you could help offset the cost for in town. If you're going to charge us for the games, you can reduce our costs. So does anybody know that ratio?
We have to pull that from Parks and Rec, I guess.
I mean, that would be a big way to justify how you can increase the numbers and decrease the numbers they have.
But the whole idea of having the numbers for the people is because they have skin in the game. We're not doing it to penalize them. Okay, so we're not going to raise the out-of-towners?
I mean, I'm okay to raise it. It's, you guys.
Melissa?
Well, if you are going to raise it, then I can see it, to his point, coming down for the residents.
We didn't
Otherwise,
charge
just
the
leave it.
residents because we
Right.
wanted to bang the residents.
Right.
We charged the residents because they need
Exactly.
skin in the game, so
Yeah,
they don't
I
reserve
agree.
20 fields.
There should be.
So we can't be lowering.
There should be skin in the game for everybody.
Right.
That I agree with. Just, it's a matter of what numbers you come up with.
John, what do you think the out-of-towners should pay?
65 and 85.
I'm good with that. 65 and 85, Melissa?
I'm fine with that.
Works for me.
65 and 85.
I'm okay.
I'm okay with that.
65 for practice, 85 for games.
Okay.
Okay. And that's category,
That's category I.
that's category I. Okay.
Yeah.
This is all based on, we can't get it.
Okay, we can't.
No, we
Any
can't.
questions? Okay, I'm sorry, but our public comment is over. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, but we just have to
There's a certain
do
structure.
procedural things, okay?
I apologize.
Okay, so we have the ordinance now with Tier A, 90% plus residents, first section, and I, $65 practice per hour, game per hour, $85 would be the two changes that we're making. And we would need a motion to reintroduce the ordinance with those changes.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Go ahead.
Now you do, ask him, go ahead. Do it.
No, I did it last time. You do it this time.
I'll make a motion to make the changes on that ordinance and reintroduce it.
2021-15.
Ryan?
2021-15.
I'll second it. With the amendments.
I think it's 2021-2014.
All right, whatever.
No, it's 15.
14, no?
No, it's 15.
2021-15.
Yeah, dash 15, no.
2021-15.
Yep.
With the amendments.
That's,
Oh, yeah, okay.
all sorted out.
My bad.
We're good.
We're good.
We're on the roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dracy?
Yes.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Where am I? I'm over here now. There are no minutes presented for approval, and there are no items scheduled for closed session discussion. There being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 8:30.